Well, it's time to look through the papers for you this morning with the theologian Vicky Beeching and eco-engineer Dick Strawbridge. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Nice to see you. Vicky, we'll start with you, should we? And the front of the Mail, I mean, our main story this morning as well. This fox attack, apparently, in south-east London.
Yeah, incredibly sad and quite a horrible thought for any mother. Apparently she heard a bump and a scream and she came into the room where the baby was, only to see this fox dragging her child off with its arm sort of stuck in its throat, and there was some kind of exchange and a scuffle, and the baby's finger was torn off. So absolutely horrible thing for any mother. Anybody who sees foxes around now may look at them slightly differently. I thought it was interesting that the RSPCA was very quick to rush in and say, don't worry, you know, they're not dangerous, they don't usually attack. But in this case, and the case of 2010 with the twins in East London, we're actually seeing maybe a new boldness that is quite frightening. It is a hugely disturbing story. I mean, clearly we need to do more, Dick, don't we, to protect ourselves? And I guess a lot of it is, you know, the basics of not leaving rubbish on the streets and keeping doors and windows shut.
It's interesting, you don't see these stories with sort of foxes that live out in the country and do what foxes do. When you actually come to the city and they're living off McDonald's and they're living off all the scraps things around the place, completely different attitude to people. And for me, the saddest thing about this is, you know, a fox is a carnivore. It will eat, and it's just really sad people get in the situation. But urban foxes, I have no affinity with them. I don't like them at all because they're in the wrong environment completely. And that's the big difference of this one. And I think it's a very hard thing to tackle because they've moved in now.
They have.
You know, you've got to look after your kitties because of foxes. That seems to me.
And they are much bolder now. There was a time when a fox would sort of scurry off if a human came close. And now they just stare at you.
I've had a few standoffs where I wondered who was going to go first, me or the fox.
Yeah, I tell you what, they are very brave things. Thankfully, I now don't live in the cities in the same way. I just don't see them, which is remarkable, really. Anyway, look, we'll leave it there for the time being. Lots more still to come for you in just a moment. Stay with us. So we're looking through the papers this morning, having a chat with theologian Vicky Beeching and the eco-engineer Dick Strawbridge. And I've got to ask you, Dick, because I'm intrigued, because I've not heard the term eco-engineer before. What does that involve? I think it came up.
I'm an engineer. And I've done a lot of engineering, but then when we moved down to Cornwall to our small holding, I was looking at environmental issues and doing things like working with wind turbines, water wheels, and generating our own power. And so the environmental side of engineering is something I spent a lot of time working with. And you know, I get to play. I'm an engineer on telly. I can do all sorts of things. So eco-engineering just basically means I'll build anything. But I also do other stuff. I do military stuff and you know, just general sort of blowing stuff up and going fast in vehicles.
Oh, blowing stuff up.
Oh, I know my life is good.
That's no, but you know, it's a bit like what was that show on Sky One where they used to sort of blow things up, sort of Brainiac. That was
the caravan always gets blown up.
It was brilliant. I want to move through some of the front pages. In fact, I think this is one you picked actually on the front of the Observer, Dick, looking at the situation in Zambia and a sugar giant, British sugar giant, caught in what they're calling a global tax scandal.
Multinationals avoiding tax. Where's the surprise in that? There isn't one. But actually, you know, we've had the whole thing of people talking about, oh, let's not go to Starbucks. Starbucks isn't paying any tax in the UK. If you go to Zambia and you look what's actually happening with British companies out there as well, they need money. We're talking about a country with malnutrition, with major issues compared to the United Kingdom, and there people are avoiding the tax as well. And just think what billions of pounds of tax can do to countries like that. And, you know, we're cross about it in the UK. Who's actually getting cross for Zambia? Because they're happy to get whatever money they can get in. And the avoidance of tax being paid where the natural resources are being taken out, it is scandalous. And I think it's very sad.
It is, yeah. I was reading that 70 billion a year is basically generated through tax avoidance, and that could save the lives of 85,000 children under the age of 5. So all those lives lost for the sake of these.
But are we surprised that companies want to maximise their profit? That's what they're about.
Let's start off saying
it's a moral argument, isn't
avoiding
it? It's nothing
tax.
illegal.
Avoiding tax, no, you know, that's part of the world, and we know that. And people are very smart about this, but there is also that moral obligation to do something. And I think there's got to be a balance. You know, if everybody paid every single penny, then they wouldn't make any profits. The shareholders wouldn't be happy. Everything would grind to a stop. is the world we live in. But when it comes to countries that need it, then maybe people should be thinking with their hearts as well as their heads.
But I think people have to be made to be moral, actually.
They
I
do.
don't
The
think they do
Starbucks thing was
voluntarily.
very interesting, how that became a kind of viral campaign. But I think if there are lots and lots of these stories keep coming to the fore, people will actually be so overwhelmed by the number of things they have to avoid. I noticed on here, Twinings Tea are part of this this company, and I've already been avoiding Starbucks, so I've lost my coffee, and now I may lose my tea as well.
But it's interesting because, you know, it's no surprises. You know, we can sit here and talk about this, but I don't think there's any real surprises. The scale of this, and we don't actually think of depriving the developing world. And I think that's where it comes into. And the names, name any brand you like, and I bet you they're involved as well, because everybody maximises their profits.
Well, yeah, which is no
Hard to fix
surprise,
that,
but it's the moral compass argument with all of that. We've got a story this morning, Vicky, about alcoholic parents and a million children in the UK having to deal with that, which is a great concern. The Daily Star Sunday looking, when it comes to alcoholism at Gaza. This is a big moral question now, isn't it, for the UK? This is a growing issue, alcohol consumption, and ultimately that often leads to either illness or dependency or both. How do we tackle that on a moral issue? Obviously, you've got a big involvement in the church and young people within the church as well. How do you deal with this growing trend?
I think it's an interesting one. I've lived in America for 8 years of my life, and that was a very interesting experience to see the difference in approach to alcohol there and here, and what happens with the different age limits and how kids tend to experiment. But I'm a real passionate believer in teaching people how to handle things well, not making something off limits, and actually helping kids with whatever it is. And we deal with that a lot in the church. You know, there's a lot of high moral standards to do with alcohol or drugs or sex, and sometimes it can be kind of treated like they're these taboo things that you just don't go near, and then a lot of kids tend to go off the rails, you know, and just go crazy. Whereas I think if you teach your children about alcohol, drink it together as a family in a healthy setting, you know, you come up with kids for whom it's not a taboo, it's not kind of a minefield, it's just normal, you know, normal life, and they have healthy approaches. So I think it probably starts around the family table, learning how to handle things well as kids.
But it's not every family table where we sit down with a glass of wine and, you know, sharing it out in the family, getting used to it. I think it is difficult because alcohol is the one legal thing that we are allowed to have. And as Britons, you know, we go back to Anglo-Saxon times, and that's how we used to get all fired up for war. And we drink, and just the lagerlouts whole concept and everything else. We're not very good at drinking.
But we've got this attitude, haven't we, in the UK, where instead of going out and having a drink, people go out to get drunk.
They do, absolutely. It's become a culture. Like now, a lot of people my age that I chat to, they feel like the end of their night was unsatisfactory if they weren't totally drunk, and I just think that's really sad. If that's what it takes.
It is a cultural thing, though.
Yeah,
Completely a cultural thing.
People my age are different. Yeah, because we just don't like hangovers.
Neither do I. I'm old before my time. I like my Twinings too.
You were saying, Dick, about the things you do, and one of the things you said was driving fast cars. Well, it was all very exciting. But it's interesting that, and the Mail's picked it up this morning, that axing ads for road safety for children. What impact do you think this will have? Because I mean, it was one of those familiar things that I just grew up with. Will it have an impact, do you think, losing these sort of adverts?
I think the way people view television and the way people take their information is very different now. Axing Tufty, it's, you know, that's the headline stuff, isn't it? Yeah, and even the Green Cross Code Man. But we learned from that because when you sat in front of a television, you watched television through the adverts, and because you didn't have a remote control. Now we've got a remote control.
I was the remote control.
Where you are,
My
you
house.
see. You know, people stayed on a channel, and you could actually absorb. And you know, your parents actually encourage you to watch these things. But nowadays, how do you get the message across to children? Much more savvy. Yeah, you know, they've got a different way of absorbing information. Losing the Green Cross Code Man and losing Tufty, that's all very sad. But we've got to get to our kids in a way they'll absorb it. And it's very different from the 60s when I was watching them.
Yeah, and I guess so many children now are online through different
Yeah.
tablets and gadgets. Maybe they'll find it, but I am concerned about it. I noticed in the article it said that the death toll was actually on the rise, so it's not like things have got better. And I wonder if children will find internet sort of savvy ways to become safe on the roads. A couple of comments I've heard made about the story was, don't worry, you know, they'll find out online. And I'm thinking, well, children aren't looking for that
I think
online,
it's going
are
to be
they?
left up to parents to educate children, but I think in general they're less road aware because we don't have these
But
campaigns.
school, we learnt at school. Yeah, the Tufty Club at
I
school.
was in the Tufty Club.
I don't remember that far back from me, but we were, and we learnt at school, and it was part of what. And I think we still have a duty, especially now. You know, everything everything from electric cars that don't make a noise. This is very different from stop, look and listen, isn't it?
Very true.
It's important we get the message across.
Yeah, I
Very
think
much
that's
so.
a very valid point. Vicky, Dick, thank you for that and for taking us through papers that you hadn't had a chance to have a look at this morning. We'll sort that out for the next hour, I promise you. But let's find out what Charlie's found for us this morning.
Stephen, hi there. Morning.